Maybe he is born of grit and hellfire. By all Marvel no get off my sheets. Chapter 7. Jessica was embarrassed to say that the thought had not even crossed her mind until she was wandering through the aisles of the Whole Foods after she left Peter at school. The app to Foggy's group chat opened as she looked for something she could eat while holding a camera. It promised to be a busy Monday. Group chat, Peter Parker Protection Squad. Mods, Foggy Bear, Care Bear. Members, Colleen is Fantastic, Dragon Fister, I'm Not Daredevil, Jess for Success, Mr. Cage, Save Me Claire. Stopping in her tracks, she quickly pressed the button for the voice chat feature so that Matt wouldn't be forced to put the words through a text-to-voice reader. "Oh my God," she said, staring in horror at the display in front of her. "Murdoch, we forgot about Halloween." The silence was telling. "Is that important?" Jessica rolled her eyes. To a boy who loves Star Wars and the Avengers, yeah, Halloween is basically the promised land for a little kid, Murdoch. Didn't your dad ever take you trick-or-treating? Matt verbally shrugged. Kind of. When I was really little, but the older I got, the more he went out to work. If I could look after myself, that was money we didn't have to pay for a babysitter. And if I wanted candy, he'd just buy one of the big bags they sell for people to pass out, and let me have it all to myself. Then after the accident, neither of us really saw the point. I couldn't see the costumes or any of the decorations. And processed candies made me really sick for a long time. I still can't eat it much. Over his shoulder, Foggy said, "Halloween isn't about the candy or the costumes. It's about the event, Matt. The experience of getting to be someone else for a little while." Riley, he added, "Not that you need that, because for you every night is Halloween, but for everybody else, it's a chance to give up your normal life and be supernatural. Even if you only do it for a couple of hours." There was a soft click as Danny connected his end of the app to the call so that he could join in verbally instead of just listening to them talk to each other. Guys, I have such a fantastic idea. It will be amazing, guys. Please don't hold us in suspense, Danny," Matt said dryly. Leaning back in his chair, Foggy had gestured Karen into the room, and they were now listening over either shoulder. Danny talked with all the enthusiasm and speed of an excited child, and it abruptly and painfully reminded Matt of Peter. Matt wondered if Danny would be this way, if his excitement would be so intense and childlike, if he hadn't lost both of his parents so early in life. By the time he was finished explaining his idea, Jessica stood in the middle of the grocery store and barked, "No fucking way," into her phone, causing several people to pause and stare at her. "Not in your life, Rand." "But he'll love it," Danny whined. "And it will look so cool. Come on, Jessie." "Do not call me Jessie," she snarled. "Hey, male parental unit, mind pitching in on this conversation?" "He would love it, Jess," Matt sighed, knowing already that he was agreeing to a full night of polyester and nylon. He grimaced at the thought, but it would make Peter so happy. "Oh my God," Jessica snorted. "Fine, I'm picking out my own goddamn costume." Chiming in, Karen said, "Pick yours tonight so I can coordinate with Colleen and Claire. I already have some ideas, but I don't want to commit to anything unless I know who you've picked." Jessica huffed, but they could all hear the small amusement in her voice just before she disconnected the voice chat. "I'll take care of Peter's as well. Murdoch, get Nelson and Paige to help you with yours." Matt let out a long-suffering sigh and Foggy laughed, clapping him on the back. Come on, buddy, it'll be fun. In the afternoon, Karen got a hug and a kiss on the cheek for reminding Matt that he needed to leave. A bit guiltily, he said, I feel bad leaving you to get through this when we have so much work to do. Matt heard the sound of ceramic scraping over the wood of Foggy's desk just before he swallowed down the last of his cold coffee. Don't get the sad puppy face, Matt. I could use a break, and Karen thinks we don't know she skipped lunch to wrestle the good folks at the Department of Corrections. At the coffee pot, Karen huffed and stuck her tongue out at the back of Foggy's head. Go pick up your son so I can squish and hug him, she grumbled. I need someone to cuddle after talking to that horrible man. One cuddle buddy coming up, Matt said with a mock salute. Please eat something, Miss Page. He heard Karen's return salute cutting through the air. Aye, aye, Captain. Not for the first time, Matt sent a silent thanks to Jessica for her ingenious idea of placing the bells upon Peter's bag. The crowd of children were sort of overwhelming to his senses, but their bright ringing provided a location that he could properly pinpoint, and so when Peter ran straight at him, he crouched just in time to lift him up into his arms. Did you have a good day, Pete? Mm-hmm. We learned about tortoises from the Galapagos Islands. Peter sounded a bit congested, like he was coming down with a cold. He supposed that was to be expected. Children didn't know how to prevent illness, and they spent all day crammed together in a relatively small space sharing germs. That didn't mean Matt was looking forward to it. Can I call Jess tonight? She said I should tell her when I learned something cool. She'd like that, he agreed easily, gently placing him back down at his side. We're gonna go visit my office for a little bit. I think Aunt Karen could use a hug. She had a rough day. They stopped at Mary's on the way, the smell of vanilla and spices filling the air with their heady scent. Mary herself was standing behind the counter, and Peter, having already met her twice on short walks with Foggy, had no problem bounding straight up to her. Hello, Miss McTiernan. According to Foggy, Mary was a buxom Scottish woman with freckles and a long braid of red hair, which might be of the reason he visited so often. She leaned over the polished marble to meet Peter's eyes, greeting him in her soft Glaswegian drawl. If it isn't my dear customer. Hello, my little lad. Did Daddy just get you from school? Matt could hear Peter's heart jump slightly at the word Daddy. But Peter just held tight to Matt's hand and pretended not to notice the word she put in that sentence. Yes, we need an apple pastry to cheer up Aunt Karen, please. Oh, aren't you a darling? Mary cooed. Of course. Perhaps a fresh cardamom scone for the good boy, too. The question was addressed to Matt. He sighed. Mary ground the cardamom herself in-house, and he could tell by the smell they hadn't been out of the oven longer than an hour. He was a weak man. We'll take half a dozen, Mary. I could use a snack, and Fox would never forgive me for coming back empty-handed. That man could keep me in flour all year round, Mary said with an admiring sigh. Oh, of course, Matthew, will you take a block of butter as well? I've got goats from Wisconsin, buffalo from Italy, and cows from Vermont, Ireland, and Belgium. Surprise me, Matt replied with a serene smile, knowing that Mary would pick whatever she thought went best with her cardamom scones. As they were leaving, Peter fell into a quiet thoughtfulness that Matt was learning tended to precede some great question that had occupied his mind. As he feared, Peter asked, "Are you, mad that I call you Matt?" He could hear the real question behind that. "Are you mad that I don't call you Dad?" Oh my, the poor boy couldn't even bring himself to say the word Dad. "Why would I be mad?" Matt answered pleasantly. "It's what I told you to call me." "But yeah," Peter said lamely, stumbling over each word as it tried to come out. Matt could sense the heat rising in his cheeks. "Is there something different you'd like to call me?" he said slowly. "Because Jess and I wouldn't mind you calling us Mom and Dad, but we don't want you to feel like you have to." Not for the first time, he wished he could see what Peter's face was doing. Oh, okay." There was another pause. "Can I think about that for a while?" "Take all the time you need." He wondered if it was circumstances or genetics he could blame for such a serious little boy. If it were grief and loss that made him so pensive and somber, or perhaps just the natural result of his intelligence and Matt and Jessica's admittedly sort of cynical personalities. Matt contemplated that it was almost fated, in a way. As much pleasure as he and Jessica took from Peter's happiness and delight, they weren't well suited to handle a child who was carefree and joyful all the time. As terrible as it was to say, these moments felt a little more natural to them. Excited and talking a mile a minute, or gloomy and stuck into him like glue, Matt wouldn't trade him for the world either way, and he was confident that Jessica felt the same. The moment they went through the office, Karen and Foggy's hearts sped up with happiness, both for Mary's and for Peter. "Here you go, Aunt Karen. Matt said this would cheer you up." "Oh, Peter, that's so sweet of you guys," she exclaimed, stooping down to give him a tiny squeeze around the middle. "Matt and Foggy have some dusty old files to read. Do you want to read a book with me?" "Yeah." Though Foggy gave a sigh of mock frustration, he could sort of understand why Matt was so distracted. Superhearing had to have its ups and downs, especially when Matt would rather spend time with Peter. Karen had filled the bottom drawer of her desk with all of their favorite books from childhood, even badgering Jessica until she gave her an honest answer. And in the next room, Matt could hear her slipping off her high heels and settling onto the squishy sofa normally used for waiting clients. "Come be my cuddle buddy," she said, getting him settled next to her. "Okay, let's start with this one. Do you want to read it, or should I do it?" "You can," Peter said happily, stuffing a cardamom and vanilla scone into his mouth. All right. Chapter 1. There is no lake at Camp Green Lake. There was once a very large lake here, the largest lake in Texas. That was over 100 years ago. Now it's just a dry, flat wasteland. Foggy nudged him after watching the dopey, lovesick smile on his face. "Hey, if you're gonna look like that, you could at least explain why." "Holes," Matt said, then shook his head and smiled. "Holes by Louis Sakar. It was my favorite book as a kid. I must have read it 100 times. Figures. Curses and combating the criminal justice system." Foggy said, wisely, with a nod. "Is that what she started with? Man, I was hoping she was gonna start with one of mine. Amused, Matt asked, What did you put in there? Ella enchanted, Foggy said, also a bit amused even if there was a hint of unease in his voice. At Matt's confused look, he clarified, It's a very broad take on the classic story of Cinderella. Okay. Trying to ease him gently into understanding, Foggy said, Ella is a girl cursed from birth to obey every order anyone gives her. Any order, Matt. Oh. Matt blinked. Oh my god, does Jessica know? How are you still alive? Yes, she knows. It really was my favorite book at 12, but I also thought it was a good sort of jumping off point for when he gets older. He'll understand the basic concept, and he'll also be able to understand that this was a terrible, terrible thing that happened to his mom without anyone going into graphic detail. Back to his good humor, Foggy said, and if that wasn't enough, I know for a fact that Karen put Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and the Golden Compass in there. Matt hummed. I'm okay with Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets, maybe even Prisoner of Azkaban, but the Goblet of Fire might be a bit heavy for him. It's meant for children twice his age. The good Catholic boy has no problem with the book that kills God? He teased. Hey, you said the Golden Compass, not the Amber Spyglass. If only the woodpecker sighs. The bark of the trees was as soft as the skies, while the wolf waits hungry and lonely. Eric followed her, because Trish told him to. Because she wanted to know for herself that Jessica was okay, and if she wanted to get closer than a block away, she needed someone with a face Jessica wouldn't recognize. God knew that Eric didn't want her to suffer the same way he had. Maybe if he'd accepted Trish's help before, when she asked to team up, Bree would still be alive. The only information he had on Jessica was her name, her face, and that she was insanely strong, according to Trish. She had not mentioned that whatever Jessica's mind was made of, it was the equivalent of aspirin and an ice pack. But Trish couldn't have known that, and Eric was not about to complain. Trish had also not mentioned Blind Suit Guy. Blind Suit Guy was already sitting at an outdoor table by the time Eric had caught up with Jessica, and she walked straight to him and sat across to him. Curious, Eric sat at a nearby table and sucked in a sharp breath. Jesus, what were these people? Alone, Jessica's mind was a soothing buzz of aspirin to his nerves, a shield that she held out in a radius around her. Whatever could be said about her less than pleasant attitude, Jessica was generally a very well-intentioned person. Together, the two of them were so fantastically, fundamentally good that it was like taking a Vicodin. Eric wanted to follow the two of them around and live pain-free forever. Surprised you let yourself get away, she told the blind stranger, her voice in a low, wry drawl. The stranger smiled, a gentle expression that nonetheless contained something oddly sharp. He was so excited to talk to you. You weren't in the middle of a case, were you? Jessica's face softened. I always have time to learn about turtles. Tortoises, he corrected with a small laugh. Her nose wrinkled. What's even the difference? He smiled again, the corners of his eyes crinkling at her. I honestly have no idea. We should ask Peter. She nodded, smiling at the espresso beside her elbow. It was an unusually sweet expression for her severe face. Did Nelson help find you a costume already? Costume? Handsome stranger nodded. I know you've got yours. Karen has spent the whole morning vibrating out of her chair with excitement. She told me Danny is practically having a seizure in the group chat. Jessica sighed quietly. Eric had to strain to hear her. Do you ever feel like you fell asleep and now you're in a very nice, very strange dream, Matt? Matt. That was the hot blind guy's name. Matt folded his hands in front of him, head tilted in her direction. All the time, Jessica, especially lately. The rest of the conversation was a brief consultation on a legal matter. Matt, the blind man, seemed to be an attorney of some kind, but most of their lunch was spent in a comfortable silence. This was not the relationship of two people just getting to know each other. It was the ease of a dedicated couple, but Trish had never mentioned that Jessica had a boyfriend or a husband. In fact, she said that her sister was a fierce and prickly woman who had pushed anyone who had ever loved her away. And yet, here they were. They didn't hug or kiss as they left each other. Instead, Jessica murmured, "See you on Halloween." And Matt replied, "We'll call tonight. Have a good day, Jess." "Yeah, Matt, you too." Eric found their separation almost painful in of itself. Jessica's inherent altruism was stronger than Matt's, but she held it very tightly to herself, like a shield between her and the world. Eric had to be nearly on top of her to feel it, though Matt's was not as intense up close. He was projecting it outward, as though he were trying to infuse everything and everyone he met with his own pure intentions. It was so blissful Eric could weep. "Rude of you to show me a picture of your hot sister without telling me she already has a guy," Eric told Trish as he strolled through the door. Instantly, Trish looked more awake, despite staying up so late trying to keep an eye on Salinger. "She what? She has a boyfriend?" "Yup, blind, dark hair, wears a suit, about this tall," Eric said, with a gesture at Matt's height. "His name is Matt. Pretty sure he's an attorney or something." "No way," she breathed. "The blind lawyer? Does he wear red glasses with round lenses and have some scruffy facial hair?" "Yes," Eric said, a little uneasy now. "He was supposed to be dead," she blurted out, eyes wide. They were all in an accident years ago. All of us saw he was dead. She's okay? No threats? Salinger hasn't been hunting her down?" "Not as far as I can tell," Eric admitted. "As far as I can tell, they're going to a Halloween party, and unless that's code for something, your sister is safe." Trish still looked troubled, but nodded in agreement. There was nothing more that she could do. Jessica wouldn't speak to her, though she now called as often as once a day. It devastated her, but Trish knew that Malcolm had been right. If Salinger had figured out that Jessica was her weak spot, trying to speak to her now wouldn't accomplish anything. But making Jessica's anger fresh and new, and if he hadn't, continuing to show up at her office would only direct his eyes toward her. On Thursday, Matt was not there to pick him up from school. Instead, Ned watched Peter walk up to a very pretty, tall, blonde lady carrying a brown briefcase. "Where's Matt?" Peter asked, getting a bit concerned. He's okay, right?" "He's just fine, sweetheart," she assured him with a smile, tucking a strand of loosened hair from her bun behind her ear. "But the judge on our case is being a bit of a butthead. So he and Foggy have to stay at the courthouse right now." "Who's your friend, Pete?" "This is Ned, and he's my best friend. And this is my Aunt Karen," Peter said proudly, and Ned shyly waved a pudgy hand at her. "Hello, Aunt Karen. Can I stay with you guys for a little bit? My mom needs to finish up at the dentist." Karen beamed. Are you guys hungry? I'm starving. I could really go for some noodles right now. Yes, please. Mia's noodles were only a block down from their school, and it was as they were crossing the street to the shop that it happened. Sometimes when something terrible is happening right in front of Peter, the world slows down. His eyes became a pair of cameras that could capture each separate movement around him. He was moving at ordinary speed, but everyone else moved like they were walking through clay. Directly to Karen's right, on the opposite side of the hand he was holding, a man on a bicycle was looking at his phone, one hand barely steering the handles. He was headed right for Karen, and instinctively, Peter knew that she would be seriously injured. Aunt May had accidentally burned or cut herself several times with him in the room, and Matt had nearly tripped on his backpack, like his danger sense. It only seemed to turn itself on when something really bad was happening. Already preparing himself for the inevitable consequences, Peter pulled his fingers from Ned's hand and grabbed the back of Karen's jacket, yanking her out of the street. Oh my God! Karen cried, flailing backward as the cyclist yelped and swerved wildly past them. Oh my God! Are you guys okay? Peter, sweetheart, that was such quick thinking. You saved my butt back there. Your dad would be so proud of you. Peter could barely concentrate on her words. I'm just glad you're okay, he squeaked, flailing out for his friend's hand again. Ned caught his grasping fingers and squeezed. I am... Thanks to you, Karen said with another giant smile, kissing his forehead. He returned the smile as best he could, depending on Ned to keep him from stumbling into something. In front of him, the whole world had gone from a razor-sharp focus moving in slow motion to a psychedelic kaleidoscope of color swirling and revolving in front of his eyes. Safely in the noodle shop, Karen went to order their snack. Under his breath, Ned hissed, Did it happen? Was that it? Peter nodded and whispered back, Help me. Please, Ned, I don't want her to think there's something wrong with me. I got you, buddy, Ned assured quietly. Peter's question to Matt about going blind hadn't been the curiosity of a child. He'd been wondering if his father had once experienced the same chaotic, slow, then fast pace of the world. If maybe his ability to sense and anticipate the danger he was in was not some freakish anomaly, if it would one day lead to Peter permanently losing his sight. On the bright side, that probably wasn't the case, but it meant Matt wouldn't understand what was happening to him. Squeezing his hand, Ned whispered, Does your head hurt yet? Peter shook his head, color spinning wildly around him. Not yet, but it's getting a tiny bit easier to see, so it probably won't take long. Already? He asked, hand drawing back slightly with surprise. It usually takes over an hour. Shaking his head again, Peter swallowed the sudden burst of nausea he felt. It's over faster every time it happens. That time in kindergarten with the monkey bars took nearly a whole day, remember? I had to be out sick the next day. Last time you saw, it took over an hour. Ned snuck a quick look at the phone Karen left on the table, checking the time. I think it's been maybe 10 minutes now. Glancing at Karen as she approached the table, he said in a hushed tone, Karen is on her way now, dude. Try to act normal. It wasn't that hard. Peter had to do it before. At school even, with dozens of kids around him, he could eat well enough, as confused as his vision was. He had plenty of practice with chopsticks. Halfway through their noodles, Miss Leeds texted the limited-use mobile phone Ned had to say that she was on her way. And less than 5 minutes later, Foggy sent a text to Karen saying that they had finally wrapped up their case successfully. Ned was worried about leaving Peter by himself in that condition, but consoled himself with the fact that his dad wouldn't let something terrible happen to him. And anyway, he couldn't think up any excuse to his mom or Karen for him to stay there longer. Peter would have to make it on his own. Hopefully, this could force him to confess his gift, and he wouldn't have to hide it anymore. He didn't confess, of course. He was his father's son. Matt was surprised when Peter didn't immediately come running to him as he stepped into Peter and Karen's view. He heard Karen cheerfully say, "There they are. Hi, fellas." Peter remained hanging around Karen's side, his heart skipping a tiny beat, but the bells on his bag were silent. Karen quietly said, "Oh, Peter, he'll be okay, I promise. You don't have to stay and protect me." "What happened?" Matt asked too sharply, and Peter jumped. He tried again, modulating his tone for something less suited to Daredevil and more suited to Matt Murdock. "What happened, buddy?" When Peter was silent, Karen glanced at his chalky pale face and admitted, "Peter's my little hero. He saved my life just an hour ago." "All right, a chip off the old block," Foggy said with an admiration, trying to coax a laugh from Peter's small, tight expression. "What happened?" Matt repeated, dropping his case to gently touch Peter's face. "A bike," Peter said, his voice stuffy and congested again. "He was gonna hit her." "Oh, Pete." Abandoning the briefcase entirely, Matt lifted him from the ground to heft him easily on his hip, and was absolutely stunned when Peter turned his face into his shoulder and began crying silently. "Baby, Aunt Karen is A-okay. Thanks to you, nothing bad happened." "It's not that," he sobbed. "My head really hurts." "Did you hit it on something?" Karen gasped, even as Matt reached to check for bumps and bruises. There was nothing there, as far as he could tell. "No," he hiccuped. "Everything is just so bright." "A migraine," Foggy murmured, keeping his voice low in case it was affected by the sound as well, as Matt's headaches often were. It's okay, we'll go home and get you some medicine," Matt soothed. Plucking his shades from his nose, he clumsily set them on Peter's face. They didn't fit, of course. "Does that help a little?" "A little," Peter said in a tiny voice, still cowering into Matt's shoulder as he squeezed his eyes shut. Can we please go home?" Whatever had caused Peter's migraine on Thursday was gone by the time he woke up on Friday morning. While Peter seemed a little subdued, he swore up and down that his head no longer hurt him, and since his heartbeat was unwavering, Matt could only agree with him. Jessica also noticed he was not quite as energetic as usual on Friday when she picked him up. But since he spent Saturday morning doing the hustle with her, whatever was wrong with him obviously was cleared up by then. Matt informed her that he would happily pay his whole savings account to have his sight back long enough to watch Jessica Jones do the hustle, and Jessica responded with a series of text messages that were definitely not safe for children. Peter was already excited to go trick-or-treating when Jess showed him his costume and told him to get ready. He was even more awed when his mother was waiting for him in the dining room dressed as Catwoman, perched on the edge of a chair as she texted someone. Her eyes lit up, and she smiled that fast, sweet smile at him, standing up in a full bodysuit of black leather. "Hey there, Iron Man, ready to save New York?" She was confident they'd done the right thing when Peter hopped up and down eagerly. Yes. Can we leave now?" "Yeah, let's go meet Batman." "Batman?" Peter demanded, hefting his plastic pumpkin wide-eyed. "Yep, we're gonna meet up with Batman," Jess promised, holding in her laughter at his tiny, excited face. "Hold on, you still have to wear your bells, Iron Man." Peter held still for the ordeal of having them tied onto his left wrist, but just barely. He was so keyed up that he nearly crashed out into the hall, barreling down to the elevator as Jess laughed behind him. "He'll be there, Peter. Slow down." As promised, outside her building was a dark figure with his upper face covered, the telltale points on his helmet giving his identity away. Awed, Peter gasped and ran for him, bells jingling. "Matt!" "Shh," Matt said playfully, finger to his lips. "Don't give away my secret identity." Giggling, Peter said, "Sorry, Batman. Catwoman said we're gonna save New York." "One Snickers bar at a time," Matt promised solemnly. "Maybe we'll spot some friends." At friends, two not-so-menacing figures emerged from the shadows. "Batman, it's the Joker!" Foggy didn't need face paint to whiten his smile. He winked at Peter, slinging an arm around Matt/Batman's shoulders. "Did I hear someone say Snickers?" Karen pouted theatrically, tilting her pigtails askew. She hadn't dyed the ends, but the Harley Quinn costume was still spot on. "I prefer a Milky Way." Matt sighed. "Too bad. We'll just have to find the rest of the Justice League." "We have the Justice League?" They found Superman and Lois Lane, Luke and Claire, on the next block over, and Lois Lane shared her juicy fruit gum with Peter. 2 streets after that, they added Wonder Woman and Green Lantern, Colleen and Danny, to their gang. New Yorkers and tourists alike stopped to stare and take pictures or recordings of them. Iron Man, the little lone Avenger, leading a parade of superheroes, bouncing up and down as he held onto Batman and Catwoman on either side of him. Mere blocks away, Pepper Potts found Iron Baby and the Justice League on her Twitter feed and shoved Tony's shoulder until he looked at the phone held out in front of him. "Holy Christ on a sweet and salty cracker. Can we keep him?" "I'm pretty sure he's got parents, Tony," Pepper said, amused. Sighing regretfully, Tony said, "Yeah, I guess I can't really top Catwoman and Batman either." Peter could not remember a better day than that one, which he told them yawning against Jess's shoulder as she carried him back home. "This is the best day I've ever had." "The first of many," Matt promised, leaning over to kiss his head. "Sleep tight, Pete. I'll see you tomorrow." "Night, Dad," Pete said thoughtlessly, eyes closed. "Night, Mom." Matt was so startled he almost tripped in the middle of the street, and Jessica had to make a conscious effort to relax her hands so that she didn't squeeze him tight and accidentally break her son's ribs. "Jessica?" "I know," she hissed, "but he's tired. He doesn't know what he's saying." "It's the first step," Matt hummed, ever the optimist despite his cynical nature. "This really is the best day ever." End of chapter.